Hi everybody, this is Kristen Lynch here with Jennings and Associates. We are coming to you this afternoon to talk about some really important information. We've received a lot of calls, and of course ourselves are interested in the information of the Small Business Association and all of the COVID-19 that's coming out currently. So this global pandemic has caused such a disruption in businesses, and we want to make sure that we're addressing everybody's concerns. We're helping people with information. And while we are not capable here to actually do any of this processing, we want to make sure that we're providing you with the best resources we can and information to help you navigate through such a confusing time and quite frankly, a really hard time. So today we have brought in kind of a financial partner, a friend of ours, financial partner and local CPA, Arian Dillon. And she's going to help us just answer some questions, give some big picture information about what you need to know and what you can be doing to arm yourself with as much information to help yourself as possible. So Arian, I'm going to let you start with kind of giving us your assessment of what you see going on with SBA and your take on what we need to know right now.
So just a real quick disclaimer. My normal cap is commercial lending. So definitely have knowledge of the banking world, but my day-to-day is not SBA. And right. So of course this particular circumstance has called for different people to get involved into this process. You'll have to excuse me if I'm shaking a little bit. I've had a lot of caffeine this week and probably will continue to do so. We've been also fielding a ton of calls, a ton of questions, some which I'm great at answering. A lot I'm having to stick out. I'm having to reach out to our internal partners and really figure out these questions and answers that are going to help our different customers. In commercial lending, I deal with a lot of different types of customers.
Sure.
I pretty much touch most every industry with the exception of commercial real estate. Gotcha. And so with the stipulations set forth in the CARES Act, we're seeing a lot of what we would consider middle market companies that are still eligible under the small business relief program. So surprisingly, the 500 mark, there's still a lot of companies that fall into that threshold. And certainly you can report your companies differently. So like if you were to hold multiple franchises or you're a franchisee and you had multiple Sonics or Perfect. McDonald's or whatever, the understanding is that you could actually do it for each particular location as long as they are a separate, considered a separate business.
Gotcha.
Certainly all of those things very important to check with your financial partner. So I've really got 3 top recommendations. Number 1, most importantly, is read. Read what the SBA has put out there and make sure you're reading it from a reliable source. There is a ton of misinformation out there, and it seems like now that everybody is social distancing and or at home, maybe people are getting a kick out of putting crazy information out there. So know that there is people all over the country that are working on this, not just the bank that I work at, but all of the banks are bringing their people together for this. But it's still super important. Don't rely on your lender. Don't rely on your CPA. You need to read this application. It's 4 pages long, the actual application, the paper application. But you're attesting. I mean, you are attesting to certain facts within that document. And so very serious consideration. You do not need to have, you can trust and bring those people in. My second recommendation is discuss with your financial partner. People have different types of financial partners, bankers, accountants, CPAs, truthfully, even maybe your bookkeeper. They might have at least an idea of what to kind of help you gather information.
Sure.
The number three is assess. Should be done with your financial partner. And the other owners, if there's other owners of the company, but you need to assess whether this is really necessary for you, because like I said, there is attestation that is a part of this. You're providing insurance that you have suffered a hardship due to this COVID-19 pandemic, and to be quite honest, there's a limited amount of funding, and so no doubt certain industries have been impacted more than others, but we need to be cognizant. And I mean, as Andy Bashir would say, I really truly believe it's our patriotic duty to our fellow Americans to not go into this lightly and understand what you are proclaiming on this application. It's not to say that your hardship is less terrible than your neighbor's hardship, but you really should take some time to really think about what is the true monetary impact to my company, and then not just like right now or what you've already seen. What does this look like for an additional 45 days?
Right.
Because maybe you've been lucky. Maybe you've been really lucky, and you're considered essential, and so you have limited impact. Well, that doesn't mean that you're not going to have impact before June 30. So you really have got to read not the legislation. It's too long. Don't do that. Yeah. But you really need to read somewhere that's got a valid resource. The U.S. Chamber of Commerce has put out an infographic. It's specifically on the Paycheck Protection Program. Great infographic. It has how to calculate, what to do if your employees are seasonal. How do you calculate it? Well, maybe you were only in business for 2020. Are you eligible? Yes, you actually are eligible. It's got the calculation on there.
And if you don't have that information, just to plug there, we can get you a resource to connect with your local Chamber of Commerce to make sure you get that information. It's a really helpful document. So I think that's important.
And absolutely. I've got a few emails that I've put together too that certainly could be sent out if you're interested. But the other resource is the Senate Committee on Small Business and Entrepreneurship. These are kind of the people that were behind part of this legislation, and what they've done is they've gone in and summarized everything SBA that is in the CARES Act. And you might wonder, why do I care about that? Well, there are other possibilities and other funding programs that the SBA has been approved to do. So the biggest piece that I think everyone really needs to focus in on is making sure that they understand the PPP program is not automatically forgiven.
Yes.
And so there is quite a bit of information. To me, it's not too much. I think it's a reasonable amount of information that you do have to submit. But the key part is that you're actually going to have to ask. Which means I'm not exactly sure what that looks like. It hasn't been released what that looks like. But that does mean you will have to initiate the request for forgiveness and certainly not assume that something is automatically going to be forgiven after you've applied for it and received it.
Yeah, that's a good point, because I think sometimes these people will apply in the fact that this is a forgivable loan, but yet there are requirements that have yet to be determined you will need to do or request in order later to get that taken care of.
The requirements are actually out there.
Right.
So for the most part, the process to actually ask the forgiveness, that's kind of what we're still hanging out and figuring out. But from a fairness standpoint, they did go ahead and put out, hey, like, this is what we're going to look at. These are the types of documents that we're going to look at. I'll tell you, most of them are filings where you've had to file or pay your payroll and then have to file your payroll taxes and send them off to the state. That is those kinds of things. Those documentation pieces are what's going to be utilized to determine whether you're forgiven or not. they have not necessarily gone into exactly what a hardship, and they do have definitions of hardship, but I would be careful at what you think is a hardship, and definitely bring your financial partner in to discuss.
To help determine.
Yes. Don't apply for anything until you have talked to your financial partner, and really understand just how it works, but also the ramifications, right?
Sure.
Don't want to scare people, but
Right.
we are dealing with the federal government here. And so to think that just because this was passed so quickly, that there's not going to be, well, we know for sure there's going to be people that abuse the system.
Right.
And so to think that there's not going to be any ramification for that is
Sure. Yeah, we need to be prepared, be cautious. Yes.
dim at best,
Yeah.
right? So there is another economic emergency loan that's administered by the SBA. My understanding is this is available. This is a typical type of emergency injury, business loss grant that the SBA has. The big deal here is that you can actually apply for both the PPP program and the Emergency Economic Injury Grant.
Great.
So, with that said, I don't know that my advice would just be, oh, if you can, do it.
Right.
Because you remember when I was talking about the ramifications.
Right. I mean, it's like you said, it's a government entity
Right.
that's discussing this, so we need to be careful. Don't abuse the system, but legally you could possibly qualify for both. But economic injury, as I understand, does it have a max?
It does. It's $10,000. So I think anybody can probably see that for most companies, from a monetary standpoint, the PPP program is going to be a better fit. And then maybe the emergency economic injury thing is maybe a secondary piece that you look at after we get through this PPP thing.
Gotcha.
The application was actually released this week on 3/31.
Okay.
Afternoon of 3/31, Treasury went ahead and released it. And so what that has given us is we know what the SBA is going to require. I will warn people that does not mean that's all your lender is going to require. This SBA program is administered by banks. It is a third party type system. And so with that said, there might be additional assurances, additional certifications that your individual bank wants on file. And that's probably one of the things is a description of the hardship, right? So just make sure that you have prepared those things. I think preparedness is going to be really important too.
Key.
If you haven't heard anything about this, good news, you've still got time to get prepared.
Right.
The earliest that you could apply or actually submit applications is April 3rd, which is tomorrow.
Right.
There's still a lot of questions up in the air as far as when you submit, how quickly do you get funded? Somebody's got to get in first.
Sure.
So who gets in first? I can tell you at our institution, we've got these same questions. This is not something that we're any different than anybody else on. Yeah. And likely whatever institution you bank at has those questions too.
Right.
Please know that if anybody is presenting themselves as an expert on this,
anything that can be developed in a matter of short period of days and then put out to the entire nation. Yeah. I think the main thing takeaways here is you need to study up on this as much as you can yourself to be prepared. Recognize you need to find a trusted partner who can help you with this. Bring in your CPAs. The more trusted partners you have around you to support you through this, the better, I would assume.
Absolutely. And I think this too highlights why that is so important. Mm-hmm. Why it is so important to have a banker, not me necessarily, but a banker, period. An accountant, a bookkeeper, somebody that can help you realize when you have these capabilities. Right. For us, this has been something as soon as it was released, we are contacting our customers. Heck, I've been contacting people that I had, prospective customers, relationships, because this isn't about my bank. It's not about any of the local banks. This is about us as a nation, and nobody should feel weird or bad about taking money. We're all suffering in some way, shape, or form, and that's the right thing to do.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely.
And so, with that said, there shouldn't be any sort of incentive to go with one bank over another. This is something that is actually likely going to be forgiven, so there's not a ton for the banks to gain outside of just being there when you need them to be there.
Right. So it's a relationship based on this point. And there's a couple extra questions too that I think we've heard a lot of that we've talked about in general, is if you've already laid people off. So let's say you've had a business that was already shut down, you've had to lay people off. Can you apply for those wages? Because the calculation that you'll see on these documents, it's payroll calculations, correct?
Yep.
Okay.
Yes, if you have furloughed or laid off employees, you actually can still utilize those expenses. So I believe the base period is, if you were in business in 2019, your base period is actually the February 15th through June 30th of 2019.
Perfect.
And so what's used to calculate. You'll notice it's 2.5 times your payroll expenses.
I saw that.
They do get very detailed on what payroll expense is going to be included, what payroll expenses aren't. There's some caps. Hence financial partner.
Right.
They don't expect you to probably figure that out yourself. I would figure you need to get your financial partner involved.
Perfect. But will those funds, so we go through that and we get the payroll. Do those funds then cover just your payroll expenses, or can they cover mortgage or rent or what utilities?
So they can cover a myriad of things. And but you do want to make sure that you use the funds for what it was approved for. So you can cover payroll, you can cover interest payments, rent payments, utilities. And that probably says, well, wait, you just said that the calculation was all based on payroll. Well, that's right. The calculation is based just on payroll. I think that's where the 0.5 comes in.
That makes sense.
So you get 2.5 times the payroll expense. But they did, from the back end side, say, well, we understand that people are going to be laid off, and maybe have already laid people off.
Right.
So how do we combat that? And so the answer is one of the things you don't have to, in order to apply for forgiveness, you can get this loan for the payroll expenses that you've calculated, even if you do not have employees today. Okay. And then what happens is you need to make sure that they're employed again by June 30th.
Great. Perfect point. The idea there for the forgiveness as well is to make sure you get those employees hired back. Even if you need to use the funds in the meantime as those other expenses.
I mean, while this is all about small businesses and maybe helping them recover costs that will never be recoverable.
Right.
You can't just get back an entire month or a month and a half or 2.5 months that you've lost.
At this point, we don't know.
And so this is about keeping people from going to unemployment as well.
Right.
So if you don't have to get unemployment, we already know it's going to surge, right? And we've seen it. I mean, again, I think the last number I saw was 6.6 million.
Yeah, today it was
crazy. Needed. Nobody should be shameful in this period about any of these things. These are the reasons that the government has services like this.
Right.
It is here to help you when maybe you've had your knees kicked out.
Yes.
So that's what it's here for. And so we should utilize it. We should just be strategic and ensure that the need is for sure there, because like I said, we were talking about this economic impact loan and the PPP. To me, and this is just if I'm the federal government, I'm thinking that is a red flag.
Yes.
I'm not saying it is a red flag. I'm just putting my audit hat on, saying,
right,
if I'm going to look at something and I'm going to have to audit, there's too much money going out the door
to
not have some follow-up. And then additionally, it's not automatically forgiven. It is something you must ask forgiveness for. So there will be a period of time where you probably feel like you're taking a test of sorts. And so there are circumstances, and I have talked to people about doing both SBA programs. The big deal here is you cannot use it for the same expenses. So I'm sure you're probably thinking payroll, right? Well, I'm just covering payroll, or maybe rent and some utilities and some other things, right? From the PPP program. The economic or the emergency economic impact or injury grant, it can cover increased production costs. Maybe your throughput isn't what it was, because there's delays. I know I went to Subway today on my way here, and I put in an online order so I could be as quick as possible, of course. And they called me to say they were out of American cheese.
Yeah. So there's impact from this, and that's kind of more towards that economic injury impact.
Exactly. It's almost exactly. I mean, I don't want to make it too simple, but the names of the programs. It is what it is.
Yeah.
Generally speaking. So there's other things that are also covered. You can actually cover payroll on the economic injury grant, but it can't be for the same time period.
Gotcha.
So for instance, if you were to do this PPP program and then maybe June 30th comes, you have went ahead and brought your employees back, but you guys aren't at the service level, or maybe you can't be open, or we don't know what it looks like after this. And so maybe there's other constraints. And so if that is the case, you'd absolutely be eligible to apply for the emergency economic injury grant.
Okay.
So,
and I think that at the end of the day, these are the programs that are out there are ever changing. The information is quickly and rapidly being released and developed. These things can change. Ariane and myself, we are not SBA experts in any form or fashion, but we know it's important to get this information out there to as many people in our community as possible. We both have felt like our jobs are to strictly serve our communities in any possible way we can, and no matter how and what we can do for you, please feel free to reach out to your lenders, reach out to your bankers, make sure you're talking to your CPAs, your accountants, anybody that you can, and we're all here to lean on each other during these difficult times. So we understand that life is going to look different in 2 weeks, in 2 months, in 2 years, but we'll get through this, and we'll get through this together. So thank you for your information.
Thanks for having me.
This is huge for us, and it's huge for everybody. We feel like in our town, our clients, our community, and our customers, and we just hope that we'll continue to work through this and provide you the best information we can. So thanks a lot. Have a great day.